Good afternoon and welcome to yet another session of Unearthing. My name is Lavinia and I'm founder and director of the M Word, and I'm very pleased, of course, to have Yasmin, social media manager, also of the M Word. We said some weeks ago when we did our first round of pathological demand avoidance that we would come back and revisit it because it's such a big area of interest, and today's the day. And Yasmin and I are extremely familiar with PDA for a variety of reasons. We are both autistic with ADHD and PDA, as well as dyslexia. So we feel pretty well versed. And of course, when I'm doing lots of mental health assessments and initial screenings, and of course, therapy, I'm also explaining and understanding loads more about PDA. And Yasmin, when we had John off sick with COVID, was having to take over, having to proofread my reports, which is quite a laugh really, but with us both being dyslexic. So we're becoming extremely familiar with different styles of PDA. So I guess first and foremost, one of the things that's really intriguing is the lack of understanding, isn't it, around PDA? Would you agree? People not understanding it.
I still wouldn't say I'm confident in it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've got it. And some people go, if somebody would sit me down and say, can you explain what it is? No.
Well, we could try and pull this apart then, because that's quite a good point, isn't it? I suppose one of the obvious things that people tend to notice is that people are having extreme meltdowns. And, when we're having meltdowns, whether you're an adult or a child, the one thing that I do know and you know is that they are extremely uncomfortable and extremely exhausting. It's a bit like when you've been vomiting profusely, or you've had a massive headache, or you've been running for a long period of time. You are just saturated, aren't you? Like limp lettuce, as they say. Would you agree?
Yeah. What I find interesting, though, is a lot of these symptoms of PDA can also be used for other things. So I'm regularly on TikTok or something, and I'm like on health TikTok for some weird reason. And you've got doctors or nurses saying, did you know these are the symptoms of this, this, and this? And it's like, they're also symptoms of autism, ADHD, PDA. So do I have this as well, or is it just those? And I get so confused because it's always the same stereotypical symptoms of you get frustrated easily, or you don't always understand what somebody's saying, and it's like, okay, have I got something else to add to the list of what's supposedly wrong with me?
Yeah. I also think as well, having had a discussion with other team members just this morning indeed, PDA is very much noted for behaviour, when in actual fact I wouldn't say it's behaviour in the way that other professionals might assert. So when we talk in schools about behaviour of PDA, we invariably link it with children throwing chairs around, or slamming doors at home, or even trying to take doors off hinges. Yasmin, I don't know who did that. Or kicking something furiously. Some children have been known to attack pets, attack people. Some other children have been noted to really bang their head in frustration, or really try and find something that they can break or smash to then use to throw and vent their frustration. And if you go back to the schools again, when we think about children who are just climbing the walls, getting very distressed with PDA, there's a lot of behaviour that's seen as very negative. But in actual fact, Professor Newson designed PDA thinking about anxiety that was strictly and only associated with autism. And that's quite different from what you're describing with all these lovely nurses and doctors on health TikTok and TikTok.
What I find, though, is after you've been explaining that, I'm not sure I'm starting to like the word behavior. And maybe that's because I associate with the thought of, you know, when you're younger and kids, like your parents say, be on your best behavior, it's almost as if it's something I can control, and I can't control it. It just happens. For example, prime example, I couldn't fit things in the freezer. So now our freezer drawer has no door because I threw it and it shattered everywhere. I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't decide I'm going to throw that. You know, it just happened. So when people say behavior, you know, I just constantly think of people saying, don't behave like that. Be on your best behavior. Behave better. You know, why are you behaving like that? And it's not something I can control. It kind of just happens. And the only thing that I have some sort of control over it is the older I'm getting, I find it easier to start noticing the signs of I'm going to have a blowout.
Yes.
But I can't actually stop it. I can just make other people around me a bit more aware of, hey, look, I'm probably going to hit my fuse in a minute. And, you know, it's not you, but I still can't stop it. I can't, you know, there is no dam that is going to stop this water coming. It is coming whether I like it or not.
Yes. And that's a really good explanation, because again, if we feed it back to schools understanding around negative behavior, there is that expectation that you can do something about this. But as you and I well know, when you're in that pathway, when that river is about to explode its banks, there is nothing you can do. It's going to go. And whether you deem it as a river or as a volcano or as a, you know, just complete explosion, it really doesn't matter. What you're trying to convey is when you're in that trajectory pathway, it's pretty much finite. It's going to happen. And like you say, it is imperative that you start thinking about, how do we make other people aware to keep either them safe and me safe, or them well away from me so that I am not a risk to them. And again, it comes back to the negative understanding that if you presume it is behavioral, you will then try to restrain or constrain children who are being deemed as incredibly naughty and therefore need to be, when in actual fact that is the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, Yazzie? Let me think about that one.
Well, I was just thinking about it actually. I was never seen as one of those badly behaved kids. Like, I never threw chairs at people at school, you know. And I can always think of parents' evening, when the teacher would say to you, oh, she's really well behaved, she's really quiet. And, you know, they're talking as if, yeah, I know your kid really, really well. And you're sat there going, are we talking about the same child here? Because this is not, she's not like this at home. And they're going, no, she's really quiet. She's shy. She's, you know, and it's like, okay, you know, very good at masking that I'm the shy, quiet one. And there's been moments where I have had moments where blow-ups could have happened, like they would at home. But because I am so on edge of trying to make sure I don't come across as this negatively deemed person, I somehow managed to hold it back. But then when I'd get home, it would come out. So there was still no way of stopping it. I was just kind of delaying it. And when you think of a river or a flood, you know, you've got towns all over the UK who know this flood is coming. Every year this flood will come. So they've got their sandbags ready. Roads are closed off. You can't stop the water, but you can prepare for whatever eventuality is going to happen.
Yeah. The interesting thing about it is, because we deem it as negative or naughty behavior, we can't seem to get away from that. And the thing that I spend a lot of time doing is kind of reiterating to parents, if you start insisting on going down this rabbit hole, you are going to come really perilously falling apart. And I've got one family at the moment who have just been feeling as if they're disintegrating very much, where they are pulling their hair out. The parents are saying that they feel they've got to evict their child because they're just not coping as a family. But the thing that's really apparent is that the child knows. the child knows that they are a problem. And when you try to explain that a young person already knows how they're coming across, but that makes them feel doubly bad. You know, if you can't control this PDA explosion and you know that people are looking at you, judging you, and seeing you in a very bad light, that only makes you feel 10 times worse, doesn't it? I don't know about you, but you are a problem.
Well, I've always felt like when I'm going through it, even when I know it's coming and there's not much I can do about it, I still have this very negative voice in my head saying, you don't want to be the problem child. You don't want to be. And it's like, why is my slight reaction that I can't control automatically making me a bad person? I'm not a bad person. It doesn't change who I am as a person. It's just something that happens, and it's something that is part of me. And great, it's probably not a characteristic everybody wants. Unfortunately, that's kind of my burden to bear. But it doesn't mean I'm an evil person or I'm a mean person, And sometimes when I'm in those fits of rage, I can hurt people around me emotionally. And people in the past have always said, you're manipulative, you do it on purpose. And I'm like, but I don't. It just happens. And then I'm thinking, do these people now not like me because they think I'm like this cold, calculating person? And I'm not thinking, what can I say that will really get under their skin and really upset them? It just comes out. It's like word vomit. I can't stop it. And then I suddenly go, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And half the time, I don't even think that thing about the person. It just comes out. I haven't thought that's going to really hurt them. Like, I haven't tailored an insult to a person. It's just come out. So it's very hard to kind of police myself. And I still occasionally do it now if I've had like a really bad, for a couple of days, I'm very wary of not trying to talk too much because I'm so worried it's going to happen again and I can't control it.
Yes. So, I think for me, I just feel so utterly exhausted. I just can't. I don't have the courage to really feel I can, just flip back, bounce back and go, yay, because I'm just so utterly exhausted. But there is that lingering residue where I just feel very saturated with exhaustion for a good couple of days. And when you've still got expectations coming at you from all angles, it's really difficult. And quite often I'm asked, are you okay? You seem a bit and I'm really trying to focus on what I can hang on to at this moment. There's a lot going on, but I'm just I can't, I'm really trying to hang in there. But also, like you say, that worry about being judged for not being consistent, for having the blowouts, and being held accountable for that blowout. And where'd you go? I'm sorry, I threw my toys out of the pram yesterday. It's one thing knowingly doing it, and that assumption that people assume that you knowingly do it. But it's quite another to kind of not knowingly do it, but have that awareness that it has happened and you can't retract it. So now people are going to remember you, of course, for that negative outburst. So it does take you 2 or 3 days to kind of feel you can slowly but surely come back to, that nice sort of line. But I also know that, I'm in my 50s. It has taken a lot of time and understanding and trying to identify those triggers that absolutely make me blow. And one of the most common ones I find for adults is that you are ringing up about, I don't know, you're ringing the bank about business, you're ringing the telephone, BT, about business, you're ringing about your bill, and they've made a mistake, they've overcharged, or they've taken your money out, and you're so distressed and you can't control it, and in the end you just blow or burst into tears, take your pick, one or the other.
See, that's why when you're on these phone calls, I can't be in the room with you because you give me so much anxiety. And I'm thinking they're going, this poor person's just doing their job on the other side of the line with you going, ugh. And it's like, I'm getting embarrassed going, it's giving me stomach pain. I'm so anxious about, you know, because you're shouting. And I'm like, there's literally no reason to be shouting. What's going on?
But that's also an interesting level, isn't it? Because it doesn't feel like I'm shouting at the time, but I also am acutely aware I'm getting really hot and stressed, and I'm getting really bothered. I'm really frustrated, and whatever I'm saying isn't getting through. And, you know, this horrible situation where you know that somebody has complete control over this, and the outcome is going to be of their control, and you've got none. And to PDA, that's the worst thing ever, not having any control of anything, and not being able to resolve it in a way that makes you feel, okay, I am a party to this. This is a partnership discussion. Because invariably, these people will be telling you how it is, and they have absolutely no interest or inclination to serve you as a compassionate, feeling customer. I just wanted to kind of check in. One of my younger clients who is very fastidious with their homework had stated again about their concerns about meltdowns, because meltdowns do happen even to the best of us. And what they were saying was when they were made to try to go to school, their PDA was definitely a lot worse, to the point that they could barely go outside. They could barely do anything, even slightly demanding, and immediately would feel annoyed and angry. And the thing is, they were building as like levels. And to the point that this young person, when they were finally told they didn't have to go to school, suddenly felt like a huge weight was taken off their shoulders. But also that real frustration that PDA is definitely not spoken about enough, and is usually just put as someone being lazy or a nuisance, because they're refusing to do what seems like a simple demand to other people. So you and I can relate to that, Yasmin, can't we? I mean, that's so common, isn't it? This assumption.
What I find as well, it's not talked about enough. You could stop 10 people on the street, and I bet you not one would say, oh, yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah.
But if you were to describe it to them, specifically if you would describe a teenager who had PDA, they would automatically say, they're just being a teenager. Oh, it's teenage angst. They're just being, you know, mad at the patriarchy or whatever. And it's like, it's nothing to do with that. I don't care about the system. I'm not trying to rebel. You know, I'm not planning on doing this, you know, 70s. Like, I don't know what they think I'm doing, but that's not what it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how old I get. It's going to be the same.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for outside sources who don't know what it is to automatically point a finger of, it's the fact that you've got loads of hormones in your body. It's the fact that you're not a child, but you're not an adult. You don't know what you are, you know. And it's like, it's got nothing to do with that. It's just something that is part of me. It's not like I choose to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like the way that Professor Newson actually had the gumption to kind of understand that, you know, this is very much about autism. If you have PDA, you are autistic for sure. And I really like that understanding, because how else do you explain crippling anxiety? And that's the bit I really don't hear enough people saying. PDA isn't behavioral, it's crippling anxiety. So it may look like you're lazy, when in actual fact, what if you just can't put one foot in front of the other to get to school that is causing so much distress? And I know, you know, we laugh about it now a lot, but I remember you being so proud in the beginning in managing to get 2 trains to get to school. But as the academic years wore on, it got harder and harder. And sometimes you'd even make it to the school gates and then have to do an about turn and get the 2 trains back home and say to me, I can't do this. I just cannot do it. And, you know, the schools would be baffled, like, what, she actually got to the gate and she can come in? And it'd be like, yeah, right. And then what? Why, you know, why did she not come in? And it's like, because she couldn't. And that real you're not getting this, are you? Yeah. And unless you've been in that experience, it's really difficult to explain. What do you mean she can't? More like she won't. And it's like, no, she can't. Because if you were to capture her in that moment of standing at the school gates, very hot, very distressed, very emotional, breaking down, going, please help me, not being able to think clearly, not being able to see clearly or hear clearly, because all you can hear is amplified sensories around you, and just feeling that the best thing to do is scoot and run, to try and get away, as far away as possible from what's causing this huge volume of anxiety. Why do people not get that? I mean, it's very simplistic. I know I'm making it, but why do people not get that?
I mean, I remember that anxiety. I think of it now and go, oh, a bit stressful. And I'd get to school early, and the school gates wouldn't open yet. So I would wait outside for Poundland to open to then go in and get a bottle of water for the day. And while I was sitting there, the only other way I can describe it is like dentist anxiety, where you sat on the couch and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting, and the time's clicking forward and you're like, oh my God. And then obviously I'd get to the school gates, or I'd get halfway down the hill and I could see, and I was like, nope, turning back around, and I remember a teacher saying, would it help if I met you at the gate and walked you in? And no, that wouldn't have helped. But there's multiple reasons why that wouldn't have worked. I've the idea that I'd have to be walked in, basically you're holding my hand when I'm a 16-year-old girl. I don't need to be walked in. I just can't do it, because you doing that is just going to draw more attention to me, and I already don't like what I'm getting walking to school, so. And then it kind of luckily helped when I was actually sitting my exams. I broke my foot because I said, okay, I've come in for the exams, I'm going home now. And I remember this teacher walking me to the front gates, and she said, wouldn't it be easier to stay at school because you're here now? And I said, well, I'm in loads of pain. And she went, well, you can go to isolation. And I was like, but isolation makes me feel like I'm being punished. And why am I being punished? I don't want to be here. That's, and again, I was so focused on the fact that isolation is for the bad kids, it's for the naughty kids, and I didn't want to be associated with that because I wasn't the bad kid. I just didn't want to be there, and they would always say, oh, come into isolation, you can listen to music on your phone, bring a hot water bottle, hang out, eat food in there. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but then there's a group of 3 year 7s who are swearing, and they're the bad kids, and I'm sat there kind of going, I just want to go home where it's safe and I don't have to deal with these people.
Yeah.
And then I would get questions being asked, why were you in isolation? Because you're not bad. Why are you in isolation? And it's like, so that was also bringing more attention to me. So it got to the point where I was like, I just don't want to go in. And I would always feel so bad because I would walk to school and I'd be fine getting to the train station. And I would always have this inner battle with myself saying, do I buy this train ticket? If I buy this train ticket, I have to go because I'm wasting my mum's money. I have to go. Yeah. So it was always, once I've kind of bought the train ticket, I was like, I have to go now. And then I'd get all the way to the school gates, and it was more often than not, that is when I would turn around. But I could have done that at the train station, but I was so worried of what was expected of me, of I have to go to school, I have to show up, I'm a good kid, I don't want to be known as the bad kid who doesn't show up for days on end. And that would cause me so much pain and stress. I would just be worrying the whole way there. And I'd be like, okay, try and put some music on, try and read a book that I would normally do, and I just couldn't focus on it because I was getting so stressed and having like heart palpitations, and I'm still one train ride away going, turn back, I need to turn back. And then I would always get home and I'd message you, and I was, the entire walk home, I'd be like, I've got to message her to say I haven't gone to school. I've got to let her know. And then I was always thinking, she's going to be really angry that I've not gone. She's going to be so angry because that's what's expected of me. Adults were like saying, you have to go to school, you have to get an education. And it was after the first couple of times I was like, you know what? Most of the time, my mum knows already I wasn't going that day. She kind of just let me do it to see if I was going to do it. And then I was like, you know what? I have actually got a parent in my corner. You know, I'm not 100% alone. I mean, sometimes you did go, have you not gone? Have you paid the train ticket? And I was like, yeah. And you're like, oh, for God's sake, you've paid for the ticket. Why have you done that? And then I was like, I'm really sorry. I thought I was going to go. You know, but now I have experience of that. I know for a fact if my child was kind of going through the same thing, it is not worth the stress it causes. It is so not worth it.
Yeah. And we even tried I remember working at the time in London and getting the train halfway with you so that we could then, you know, say goodbye, wave to each other across the platforms, knowing that sometimes your train was before or after. If it was before, I could see you get on, but there was no guarantee that you would get off and walk to school. Invariably, I'd be, you know, on London public transport and I'd get a text or a phone call going, I'm really sorry, I've really struggled, I just can't do it. But it is that horrible pressure, isn't it? And, you know, I suppose what I'm hopeful for is that our viewers are seeing that this is not about the behavior, this is about crippling anxiety where, you know, with the best intentions you have wanted to go, but that PDA is just crippling you where it's to the point, I can't do this, it's causing so much. Can I take you back to the door hinge fluid flying off, you know, that scenario, because that was quite a big early PDA. That was one of the first things that really was, oh, I'm pretty sure that's not normal because that's not like Yasmin at all. Why is the door off the hinges? Do you want to talk about that?
The thing is, I don't remember what my outburst was about. That's the thing. None of these outbursts are worth remembering, but I remember what happened because obviously I was 9 or 10 with like a 6'2" door on my back, and I'm going, I can't move. It will squash me. So I called you and you said, what? Because obviously you went, she stormed up to her room. What does she want? You know, because normally I think you were expecting I'm not going to hear from her for a couple of hours. And you came up and I said, no, come quickly. and you just looked at me and we had to get the neighbour to come round to put the door back on. And he said, what happened? And he went, she knocked it off the hinges. And he went, what? That one, you know, the 5 foot at most little girl, okay. And he didn't believe me. And it was like, no, I really did. And I've never done it again. I don't know what happened. I found it so hard. It just went, you know, and
so I can fill in some of the missing blanks there. So one of the things that we were really beginning to note about was in school. So round about that time frame, schools were insisting that we had year 4, 5, 6 have discussions around sex education, and you were not ready. But also they were prepping constantly for thinking about transitioning to secondary school and therefore having to prep for SATs. So there was a lot of pressure on you. And at that time, you were beginning to work out that something really wasn't quite right, but you could not put your finger on it. And of course, we couldn't put a finger on it. We knew that you were dyslexic at that point.
Knew we had Erlands.
Knew you had Erlands, but there was still that, what's going on here? And the thing that really was beginning to get very established was your friendship groups were really breaking down quite a lot. There just always seemed to be a problem. And yet you, when you were, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, you had an army of friends. Everybody wanted to be your friend and you enjoyed that. And, you know, it got to the point where one party stood out in particular, where a mum came to me and said, very embarrassed, I'm really sorry, but Yasmin's the only girl that's been invited to my son's party. And I was like, oh yeah, they're very good friends, aren't they? Yes, but she's going to be the only girl. Do you think she'll want to come? And I said, at this stage, they don't really care. It's just the fact that they're friends and they want to celebrate. So indeed, you were the only girl that pitched up at this party in your lovely posh frock. I think everybody had to dress up, but the point being that you all had a lot of fun, but the friendships got harder and harder, and the work was getting harder and harder. And there was just this almighty, things are exploding at home that just didn't make any sense. And we were acutely aware that things were getting harder at school, but we didn't really understand why, because of course, every time we went back to the school, they would say, what? She's so good. She's one of the best pupils in the class. She's very quiet. She's, engages well. She's very appropriate. Okay, right. So they're describing perfect modeling behavior, but actually, academically, then what is going on? No, she's absolutely fine. She's doing great. And you're like, I'm really puzzled now because, we're getting all this behavior. And of course, a lot of parents can resonate with this. They're seeing all this, perfect behavior at schools, it's fine. But the behavior at home isn't fine. But of course, at that point, a lot of teachers were very keen to tell me that as a psychiatric nurse, I was a bit of a wacky parent. And therefore, maybe it was to do with my parenting. And that didn't sit either, because I was thinking, but we have a very good rapport, and one teacher was relaying to me, well, maybe you need to spend more time talking with your daughter. And it was like, how much more time do I need? Because I couldn't understand how we spent lots of time talking, on the way to school, on the way back from school, lots of times through the evening, lots of times through the week. I couldn't understand how I could squeeze more time in without, saturating you and kind of peeing you off, basically. So, I was kind of a bit stuck, but lots of parents are very familiar with that.
Well, the thing is, I want to say I was a little bit of the strange kid because of the autism, but I don't think that was 100%. Because ask me now, what did you like doing when you were a child? I liked dressing like a creepy Victorian child and standing out windows to freak people out walking past. And I would stand there with a little China doll and just, dead look in the eyes. And these people would walk past and then go, and I ducked down and then peeped my eyes and they thought they were seeing a ghost or something. And I thought that was great fun. Way, So I think maybe I was just strange. I don't think the autism, the dyslexia, whatever else you want to throw at it, I don't think that was 100% the excuse.
Do you ever remember what you felt after the door episode? Because that must have been really quite frightening, that you normally slam a door. It's happened countless times before, but this time the door flew off. I mean, did that worry you?
I don't think so. I didn't have like a phobia of doors or anything afterwards.
Well, you've never slammed a door so hard.
Well, the thing is, I don't even remember slamming it. I mean, to be fair, modern doors have like slow shuts, so I can't slam doors even if I wanted to. There's nothing worse than me having a heated moment and I want to slam a door and it's just going really slowly, because then you've just got to look at the person you're being angry at and it's just embarrassing. I don't want that to happen. But I am very wary now if doors make funny noises when closing. And I find myself quite a few times just putting my hand out just in case it starts going. And yeah. I'll be doing that for years. I know I will.
Do you ever remember being at school and getting really angry with teachers, but just not feeling able to say anything or do anything?
Yeah, absolutely. It happened quite a few times when I was in primary school, but the most one that I really, really remember, because it wasn't that long ago, was my geography teacher. Famous. The thing is, people of Unearthing are going to get quite used to these geography teacher stories because she was not a nice woman. So we were doing this coursework and it was like 25% of your overall grade. and you weren't allowed to talk to anybody. You had to do it 100% by yourself.
Right.
And out of 12 pages, you had to do 4 pages of graphs. Now, we all know maths is not my strong point. So I was very confused. And so I was whispering to my friend, because I was like, I don't want to ask this teacher. And so she shouted at me for talking to somebody. And I said, well, so the girl jumped in and said, no, it's fine. Yasmin just doesn't understand it. I'm trying to explain it to her. You can't talk to her. She has to ask me. So I went, I don't understand. And so she started talking to me in this really like belittling voice going, it's simple. We've been doing this for weeks. And I wanted to say, yeah, and I haven't got it for weeks, you know? And it got to the point where she had a go at me, and she had such a big go at me. I was sat there and I was like, I'm going to start crying. I'm going to start crying. And I was like, I want to storm out. I want to storm out, and I want to leave this room because she's not making me comfortable. I don't feel safe. I don't, I don't feel okay. But then I also had this other voice in my head going, I can't leave because I'll be seen as the bad kid. And I wish now I could have just got up and gone, because even now I'm 20, turning 21 years old, and I still worry that people who are older than me, who are still the adults in my eyes, have more control over me. And nobody should ever make you feel that uncomfortable. I should have had the confidence to go, you're making me uncomfortable. I do not feel safe. I can leave. That is my right to leave. You can't keep me here. But I was so worried that she was the authoritative figure. I had to do what she said, and I had to stay there. So the lesson ended, and I literally walked out of the room, and I burst into tears. And I went to go and see the head of the geography department. And he luckily went, I will help you. I will talk you through it exactly. And then obviously I came home, told you that story. You went to the Senko, and Senko went to her. And this geography teacher said, I didn't know I made you uncomfortable. I was like, you had a 16-year-old girl crying in your class who looked, I was visibly shaking because you were shouting at me. I didn't say anything. I clearly looked uncomfortable. And then she said, I just don't understand why you didn't get it. And I said, you do realize I'm dyslexic, right? And she went, no. And I said, you do also realize I'm autistic, right? And she said, no, I didn't know that. And then the Senko said, well, it's on her file. And she went, well, I didn't see it on your file. And so the Sen went, did you actually read her file? Oh, well, I haven't had time. I've got many students. I can't read everyone's file. Why didn't you just tell me? And I was like, why do I have to tell you I'm dyslexic, I'm autistic, and then point myself out even more in my class? It was a small class anyway. Do you really think I want to draw more attention to myself? So after that, you agreed with me that I did not have to go to her classes anymore. So I would go in the same times I would, and I would stay in the public library instead when I had her lessons. And then she ended up leaving. So I got the nice teacher who convinced me to take geography in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of rescued itself in the end. But it annoys me now, looking back, that I felt so worried that this person had more power over me and could dictate that I wasn't strong enough to leave. Because now I'm thinking of it going, what was she going to do? Was she going to tie me to a chair so I couldn't leave? No.
Yeah.
I would have just walked out the room and gone downstairs and said to an office lady, look, I had to leave my class. I don't like this lady. But
So I have another lad who has tried very hard to go to learning support. And they are presenting in a very similar fashion, okay? So they turn up, they're very good, they're very polite, very quiet. They've gone to learning support and they are turned away and told to go back to their classroom because they're absolutely fine. And I did an updated screening on them yesterday. And for a young person who's not normally angry, you know, would not say boo to a goose, but is not normally angry, is now scoring, from 10 months ago, low to high, and has revealed to me what they would really like to do to these teachers, but also learning support for missing why they've even gone to learning support in the first place. So there's something really concerning around that PDA, isn't there? That we are so crippled with anxiety, we're not actually able to say, I'm really struggling. And that is really baffling, I get. But also it worries me even more so, because if I've got a young person saying, I can't do this, or I need support, and they're being turned away, what does that then make them feel like? Because I know from our discussions that geography teacher made you feel that you were so stupid.
She even called me stupid.
But it was just so awful, because no change was being done to support you. And from my perspective, I was even more concerned knowing that I couldn't even protect you once you'd gone through those school gates, because I couldn't, shout my mouth off and, basically fight and correct. But they were very good at intimidating you. And that felt really hard, because, my anxiety was going higher and higher and higher, knowing that nobody was really fighting your corner within a classroom, which really, it's really demoralizing, isn't it? If you know that and I know that, and yet school are saying, she's fine, she's coping. And then they wonder why I go back to them and go, look, I've got a child who's going in meltdown frequently. I mean, once we'd established for you, and I will stress this, a lot of parents don't appreciate there are things that they can do to support a young person coming out of school. But one of the things that you and I cottoned on really quickly when you turned about 14 was that no matter what happened in your day, I had to meet you with food and a drink. And we just, I needed to drive so that you could just vent, eat, drink, vent. And I would never get a word in edgeways in the 25-minute journey home, not ever. But by the time you got home, you weren't looking to just unleash, because you'd done it in a very safe way. But also the eating and the snack, the eating and the drinking seemed to help. I don't know what you thought about that.
I think the fact is, I worry so much about I'm going to be seen as being rude or aggressive or whatever. So if I feel like I'm doing something while I'm ranting that's not bringing attention to me, it's easier to kind of get it out. But, it really irritates me when I hear, kids nowadays who are in school. And I'm obviously not at the age where I have my own children at school, so I can't go mama bear over people, but I do kind of go, okay, I'm not a secondary school student anymore. What are you going to do to me? And I hear these stories of, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids going, well, I want to say something. And it's like, maybe I should rent myself out. You don't feel happy to go and argue with your teacher? I'll go in, because I have a lot of pent-up rage for my teachers, and I will quite happily go in and give them a what for you, That's, I'm only just now getting more confident in the fact that I can confront people.
Yes.
Because I still feel like, oh God, they're older than me. I'm a child in their eyes. I shouldn't be saying this. But at the same time, hold up. I am now an adult. Treat me as one. And I'm going to tell you why you've made me uncomfortable, and you're going to listen to it. And it annoys me so much that I understand schools kind of need a sense of hierarchy. I get that. I totally get that. That's the way the world works. But when it's to the point that the people who are in your care for 6+ hours a day feel uncomfortable and can't say anything, and then end up bottling it up inside until it blows up, and then schools can go, well, like, you weren't like that before. This isn't you. This isn't you. What are you doing? You're not aggressive like this. And it's like, but you haven't been listening to me. I'm so uncomfortable. It's now coming out, and I can't stop it.
Yes. Did you ever worry about, because if you think about her like having, your first meltdown, that's probably a bit of a shocker. But also, if you consistently have meltdowns, you kind of begin to realize that there are times when you go through this and it's a really uncomfortable feeling and quite distressing, particularly if afterwards you feel very embarrassed or very ashamed, or just how are people going to view me, and that just is another thing. But did you ever then worry about the fact that these just never seem to stop, they are going to be a part of you?
I probably did at some point, but because kind of I've been raised relatively, okay, this is part of you, we need to find a way to deal with it. I don't think I've ever really gone, oh my god, I've been weighed down, this is gonna be bugging me for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It will always be with me, and unfortunately that's something I'm gonna have to kind of deal with, but it's not gonna stop or hinder me either, because
Yeah.
I'm now getting to the age where if I am starting to kind of get into that mode, I can now say, I need you to back off. I'm getting a bit irritated. Because beforehand I didn't have that confidence, or I didn't see the signs 100%, and then it would happen and I'd upset both of us and it would kind of ruin our week. But now I'm kind of like, okay, I'm getting a bit antsy. It's kind of like drug withdrawals, I guess. When you start kind of getting the shakes and you're starting to get the sweat and you're like, okay, it's coming now. You need to clear the room, because otherwise it is going to go off and I will burn everything that's within touch to the ground because you are in my space. And I just need that room to be able to vent without hurting anybody. And when I say hurt anybody, I'm not going to go and murder somebody because I'm so angry. I'm not violent. I need to get it out. And sometimes my words can seem really harsh, but I don't mean them to be.
Yeah. I'm just going to come back to this. Somebody has put something on there, but what I was going to say about this was the fact that there has been a noticeable decline in your blowouts, but it is like you say, we have practiced. You can't practice for something that's going to come out of nowhere, but what you can practice for is, okay, afterwards, what did we notice? And that's the bit that you and I worked extensively on. And what we learned really quickly was to always ask 3 questions. Are you hungry? Are you tired? Are you overwhelmed? The minute we got through all of those, if it was something a bit more tricky or a bit more complex, sometimes we'd have to go back over sort of like 48 hours. But also what we learned was that there are some things that are just not no go. You have to kind of break it down into much smaller chunks to achieve. And if it is overwhelming, because of course if we associate it with anxiety, we kind of piece together the anxious bits within it. And invariably the things that now trigger you are the ones when you worry what other people think of you. That's a common theme. But also when you're tired, oh my goodness me, if you're tired, let's just not go there, because it's just like, it's not even worth it. But the biggest success story with it all has definitely about, have we got a plan A, a plan B, a plan C? Because if plan A fails, don't worry about it. What about this one, Yasmin? Because you've also experienced this. So this is what this lady's put. I wish my daughter could speak out, as she internalizes absolutely everything. And there are so many young people with PDA that do this. And PDAs are not blowouts. They are more shutdowns. So they're not meltdowns, they're shutdowns. And interestingly, although Professor Newson didn't stress about meltdowns, about shutdowns, sorry, one of the things that I have found over the years is if you have a PDA profile, it isn't always about having a meltdown. It's sometimes a shutdown, and you've had experiences of those, haven't you?
Sometimes it's like a forced reboot on a computer.
Yeah.
it suddenly just shuts down and says needs an update, and you could be in the middle of doing anything and it will just lock you out. And it's very hard when those moments come, because I do feel like I can't do anything, and I often describe it as being in a kind of limbo where I'm here, but I feel like I am a ghost wandering through my everyday life because I just can't do anything. If it requires too much thought, it is not going to happen. And sometimes it can affect me for weeks afterwards. I feel like I don't have motivation to do these things, like, for example, work. And I just nothing's coming out. I can't force it, and then I do what I did yesterday and bang out a website because, why not?
But sometimes I can tell about your shutdowns just by your language, because you might ask me a question and then you'll stop abruptly and go, never mind. And it's literally that. And I'm like, no, tell me. And the more I do that, so I rarely do it, but the more I do it, the more you're just like shutting down even more. But then you see the kind of PDA really beginning to escalate like a little burner. And I'm like, oh no, we don't want to go there. So I then clamp down on myself. But it's that real frustration of, oh, that is a complete shutdown. I'm not going to get anywhere with this. How long is this going to last now? And it's incredibly frustrating, but also quite distressing to see, because I know you've shut down and there is nothing I can seem to do to kind of get you back. And it's, sometimes it can take you days, but we've also known sometimes it's taken you months to be able to download, to be able to identify that, what the issue was, which, really was quite harrowing when you were, sort of like year 5, year 6, year 7, because you were just so crippled with anxiety and could not at times express yourself in a way. Somebody else has said tiredness is a big trigger. And then we've got, this is crippling for her. She shuts off to absolutely everything and everyone. No motivation, no schooling. Yeah, Yasmin has absolutely been there. It's horrific.
I mean, I would say I'm still currently going through some of it.
What do you say to this, Yasmin? Should it be going on as long as 2 years?
I think
hello.
It might not be the same thing either. It might just be multiple shutdowns of different things, but there hasn't been a noticeable break in the system, so it looks like a really prolonged one, but it's probably by now a completely different issue. And it's unfortunate because sometimes it's very hard to be able to say what is going on in my head. Unfortunately, I don't have a little window that you can peep in and go, oh, that's what she's worrying about. Got it. Understand. I can't do that. I have to really take the time to be able to first understand myself, or at least partly understand it, before I can even translate it to somebody who's not in my head. And the thing is, it's hard. It is hard. But I know, while I might be lost from the ship of life or whatever, there is going to be a string that, if once I kind of start fighting again, somebody can pull me in with that string, and I'm kind of back on the horse and I'm good until the next time.
So I'm assuming this is the same parent we've got here, been diagnosed autism, but no PDA or even demand avoidance. So PDA is demand avoidance. What I would say to you is that, unfortunately, although it sounds like things are beginning to change, currently most agencies will only screen for autism or ADHD, and they certainly won't screen for PDA. And the reason for not screening for PDA is because, of course, it's not recognised in the DSM Bible, or indeed within CAMS or community paediatrics. So it's very much in vogue statement of us understanding it, but I use it extensively because Professor Newson very well articulated that it was very much a presentation for a lot of autistic individuals. And what we find is that if you are particularly in a screening, if you're looking at an anger screening, but also looking at, say, for example, the impulsivity around ADHD, there's a very, very, very high chance indeed that you will find that you have got PDA. So there are things that you can learn about PDA, and invariably then you're going to get a feeling of whether you think or not it is PDA. But it is very much about this crippling anxiety, is what I would say to that. Now, we're coming to the end of our program as ever. Always flies past, doesn't it, Yasmin? Always flies past. So I just wondered if there was anything you kind of wanted to finish on with regards to this. Is there anything that you would kind of say as pearls of wisdom, things that we could think about?
I wouldn't say necessarily for parents, and I doubt we have many young people who watch this, if any. And even if we did, they probably think I'm old. So, but I know it comes with age. It definitely does, and people can say that. But don't allow your fear of other people's opinions affect what you want to do. If somebody's making you uncomfortable, you can leave. There is nothing somebody can do. They're not gonna hold you there for the rest of your life. What are they gonna do? If you really think about it now, what are they gonna do? And that's what I have to remind myself, because if they try to physically restrain me, that's a big issue.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't understand, that's fine, because there will be somebody out there who does understand. Maybe you just need time to be able to process it yourself.
Yeah.
Don't rush trying to feel like I'm not back to normal, because the more pressure you put on yourself to think I'm not being my normal self, the longer it is going to take you.
Yeah.
Because if you put this pressure on yourself, it eats away at you, and you will wake up at night going, oh my God, this anxiety, So
I think that's a really valid point.
Yeah. Because I mean, again, I'm not trying to be like a hippie of self-love and all that, but the stress is temporary.
Yes.
Don't make it worse by thinking of it all the time.
Yes. Yeah. And I think as well, you've made the very valid point that as we get older, the more we understand about ourselves, the less frequent they happen. Because we tend to recognize the very earlier signs, but also we adapt our environment to fit around us rather than the other way around. And I know for myself, when I've really completely shut down, the best thing I can ever do is just walk away. Just, go walk Monty, go to a different room in the house, just walk away, because I just can't cope in that moment with other people seeing me.
The right people in your life will never hold that against you.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
the thing. And if they do hold it against you,
they're not the right people,
because they are just going to make you feel worse about yourself. And guess what? To feel positive, you need to surround yourself with positive people and not allow them to bring you down, because that is just, it's not going to help anybody.
No. And again, it's reiterating that if you're thinking it's behavior, it's the wrong language. It's very much about, this is crippling anxiety, and it's learning how to live with that. And it's doable. It's definitely doable, but it's just reiterating, what do you know about yourself, and what more do you need to learn in order to work with it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take time. You won't wake up the next day and feel like suddenly, oh, I'm really confident. I've been building my confidence for the past couple of months, so I'm slowly getting there. I kind of wish I'd had it when I was a teenager in school, but I'm getting there eventually, and it's all about growing as a person.
Yeah, for sure.
Might take a week, might take a month, but you'll get there eventually. I think that's the thing. There is no time restraint.
Yeah.
Do not hold yourself to a stopwatch, because you are just going to beat yourself up doing that.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. All right. We've come to the end of our program. we'll be back next week. I have no idea what we're going to be exploring, but we will put something out. Thank you as ever, Yasmin, for joining me. And thank you also for all our listeners. I hope this has been of value to you, and just kind of learning a little bit more about what to look for, what to consider. And like Yasmin says, there is no time restraint. It's your race against you. It's for you. It's take your time, learn, but also not feel pushed into how you should be doing it. Make it work for you. Okay, take care, everybody. We'll see you soon.